to everyone here in the audience and, of course, you, the panelists. It was interesting to see those AI and non-AI generated videos. And I'm really glad that we are here live because we are real people. We are not generated by someone in the cloud. Maybe I'll try to introduce myself because I've been working in telecommunication for quite a long time. First as a journalist, I remember when the GSM came out, and it was quite a big achievement. We could walk and talk. Then we could walk and talk throughout the world, throughout the Europe. Now we can play, we can watch videos, whatever, throughout the world, throughout the Europe, unless it's not too expensive, of course. And since 2006, I'm part of the team of the Slovenian Consumer Association, also part of the BEUC team, the digital team, and working also on some other topics like like the comparative testing. And we've just done the comparative testing of information that consumers are given when they actually close the contract in the shop of operators, and we realized that they are never really informed what they were signing, which is really, this is really last day's news, so to say. And of course, we were really concerned because I think that users who didn't think about the mobile telephony 20, 25 years ago, now they're coming into a much different space. And when they're signing the contract, they're not really aware of what is happening to them, what will happen to them, which costs do they have to bear, and so on. So this contract, when they sign, if they don't see it, if they don't see even the short resume of this contract, it's really, really, I would say, doubtful if it's a really nice thing for consumers. But we will talk this a little bit more broadly, and I'm glad that I have here my colleague from BEUC, Consumer Association. We have the analytic, we have the berec, and we have the operator. Maybe I'll just start with the lady. Of course, it's a berec's event, so I think it's also from this perspective good. And go around in the first round with very general questions. So how do you see the telecommunication market in the EU compared to the other markets or to the other world, especially from the consumer or end user point of view? I'm really sorry because I'm from Consumer Association and I realize that there are also some other end users, but at the end, someday, at some time, we are all consumers. So please.
Thank you, Bostjan, and I'm real, I'm not artificial intelligence generated. So before I start, we really have to pay attention to that we are all consumers. So everything that we do and everything that we say, we are doing for us. And what can I say as a BEREC member is that we achieved a very high level end user protection. And always, regarding what technologies will arrive, there are some key points that will always be in the focus of regulation and BEREC, of course, and all the NRAs. And that is transparency. So everything should be clear for end users, their rights and their obligations. Safety. We heard it before, so safety from the bill shocks, safety for some unexpected circumstances, especially fraudulent activities and scams, because consumers have to have faith in digital interaction and also have faith in new technologies, because only a well-informed end users who knows and understands how to use new technologies will use it and will benefit from it. Then we need simplicity. Simplicity in resolving disputes, simplicity in resolving some issues and asking questions from the operators. What is important is digital inclusion. So we have to focus on to have digital inclusion of all end users. And we all have to work together to achieve that. We also heard it before in the cartoon. And of course, end users have right to choose between different offers from the operators. If they have one operator and only a few offers, what can they choose? So there has to be a diversity for the end users to be able to have informed choice. And at the end, of course, we need affordability and accessibility key goals.
Thank you. Claudio, you agree that BEREC is doing a good, great job here in Europe?
Thanks. Thank you for that. Yes, I very much agree. Music to my ears. First of all, just allow me to say thank you to BEREC for the invitation, for BEUC, for the European Consumer Organization to be here today, to discussing this very important topic, which, you know, in this whole narrative, let's put it this way, that has been taken us over, as this aspect hasn't been exactly, you know, been much on focus. There's the end user rights, and for us, this is by far the most important aspect which to come out of the negotiations a while ago, not so long ago, and which for us is fundamental to provide this what we call the consumer safety net, which is when everything falters and everything fails, the last resort that we have to make sure that the market ensures a very basic level playing field, but to all competitors, but most importantly, a very much baseline for protection of consumers is precisely these rules, and these are fundamentally important to implement. Sadly to say, though, even though we do have these rules, they haven't really seen, you know, full development, full maturity yet. We are all very much aware of how late and delayed the implementation of the code has been. And from our side, we think that there's still much more to do to ensure that these rules are indeed translated into reality in member states, into more clear enforceable rules to protect consumers. Because even though we do have these rules, the fact remains that, and as Philippe was saying, in other countries, you know, I wish it was just in other countries. It's too close to home still, and there's still a lot of work to do. And our consumer surveys, our consumer complaints that our members get every day show that is still, even though the rules are a reality, this implementation on the ground is still, we're still a far cry from getting there. But I'm sure we're going to have more opportunity to talk about that.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the operator, Mr. Wreschner. What is your view of the market? So from your point of view, is it well developed? Is there something that you should take care more of? What are the challenges? What are the positive things?
Thank you everyone for being here. Thank Philippe for hosting as well. Look, I think answering this question, I'd like to look back, look at the here and now, and maybe look forward a little bit. If we look back, and Yves, thank you for reminding us this is the 15th anniversary of BEREC. So I did a little bit of research. 15 years ago, there was an Irish chair of BEREC. Robert, you're not the second Irish chair, you're the third Irish chair of BEREC. Maybe the competition authority needs to look at that, but I'll leave that to someone else. But if we look back 15 years ago and we think about where we were in the world, I remember not long before 2010 having that experience of, it was actually on an iPhone, of seeing the internet on a phone, the real internet. I'm not talking about WAP, if those that remember WAP. I'm talking about real internet, a website that I would look at on my PC. Suddenly it appeared in full color on my phone, and I was amazed. I remember, I'll get the numbers wrong, but someone will correct me later, no doubt, but at home, getting my 2 megabit per second broadband connection. I think in those days, I had been on Wanadoo, for those that remember Wanadoo. I think I'd moved to Orange by that time. Became BT, and then now I'm at Vodafone for obvious reasons. But you know, the 2 meg per second, and then we all talk about, well, will we ever need 6 meg per second on a home connection? And you know, does 4G actually, is it necessary? Will we ever have the use cases? So Dean, your challenge on growth in demand, yes, but we've been saying that for a very, very long time, and it's always continued to grow. But my serious point here is that we can move a step away from end user rights in the here and now. The biggest protection of end user rights is, can we continue the technological progress that we've had for the last 15, 20 years? Because it is technological progress which determines our everyday experience. If we compare now to 15 years ago, we have our entire lives in a pocket or connected to a cloud somewhere, who knows where. And we take it for granted, our photo album, our entire music library, right? Our connectivity with everyone, whoever they are, wherever they are in the world, is something that we could not have imagined 15 years ago, and that's what we have today. And that is what's going to protect our end users the most of all in 15 years' time. It's not whether we worry about contract terms and conditions, I'll come to that in a moment, but it's can we make sure that we have the technological progress to keep these wonderful innovations live for our customers. And I'm sure we will get the technological progress, but here as well, Europe needs to really have a wake-up call, and Roberta mentioned it earlier. We need to make sure that Europe doesn't fall further behind, because 15 years ago, we were at the forefront of technology. We had all of it wasn't just about 2 equipment manufacturers, we were leading the world. And we're not in that space now, and we need to really look hard at the regulatory regime to ensure that European technology and European connectivity companies can return to the forefront of innovation and technology. Then let's go to the here and now, and I think there's just one point on the contractual terms and conditions and the transparency. So we fully support transparency. It's a necessity. We put our customers in for 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts, whatever it might be, and they need to have the certainty, and that's something we fully support. There needs to be an understanding of what they're signing up for. The only thing I would caution, and I think Robert did refer to it earlier, is where we have a risk of overlapping obligations, and I think the best case in point we recently had in the UK. So we spent the best part of, I'd say, 18 months, 2 years, with Ofcom working out exactly how we need to communicate mid-contract price rises to our customers and the form those mid-contract price rises could take. We had issues around were we allowed to have inflation-linked prices. That was decided to be not allowed. The price rises had to be an exact amount in pounds and pence, and we work with that. But the point is we got to a conclusion on what we're allowed to do. At the same time, we have very strict obligations from the Advertising Standards Agency in terms of what are we allowed to communicate publicly about what our prices are. And then at the end of last year, the CMA, the Competition Authority, became the 3rd regulator to decide it's going to look at how we communicate our prices and our 24-month contract. Bringing this into the topic of drip pricing, which is a completely separate topic, which more relates to when you go online and you buy an airline ticket for £6 or €6, and you find that when you go to the basket, it's 25. So that was a drip pricing initiative, which then ended up bringing 24-month contracts into the discussion. And so we are all in favor of transparency. It's a necessity when we have long-term contracts for our customers. But please, regulate us once. There's enough horizontal regulation. It makes life easier for ourselves, but it also makes life easier for our customers if they are clear in understanding what rules we have to comply with and what they can expect to see. And the third point I'll make, let's make one point looking forward. Oh.
Yeah, we will run out of time, so I have further questions then after. So it's maybe for the beginning it's okay. I'll go to Mr. Keetelaar now. What is your view from above, so to say? What is the role or position of consumers in the telecommunication market in Europe?
First of all, thank you for having me here. And I'm with OXERA, and OXERA works for a lot of clients. And just to make sure that I'm not representing any of the clients here, I'm also an adjudicator in Ireland. I'm not speaking in that capacity either. I'm more speaking as a sort of experienced specialist or as an end user myself. So I will try to contribute a little bit to what has been said already from my own experience as a regulator, as having worked in big tech, but also having worked in a startup. I go back just as long ago as Ben did. I know all the examples that you refer to, sadly enough, and even more so. I come from a time where the networks were really slow. I worked in a startup in the Netherlands, actually, when we built the first mobile app, which was really slow. It was quite cool, but very slow. So I think we've come a long way. And I think in general, if you look at where the end users are in this market, I think they're in a pretty good place, generally. I had to go to Berlin a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to go by train from Amsterdam. It took me ages to find out first what the connection would be, and then it was not a real alternative for flying. So I think that's another example where there's a lot of room of improvement for Europe to work on better systems. And at the same time, in telecom markets, we take all those kind of things for granted, right? So I think it's a very good moment, like Roberto just said, to take a bit of a pause look at where we are right now, also embrace all the benefits, but also take a critical look at some of the things that we have created ourselves or that have evolved in a particular way, especially in the times that we are living right now. So, and I think the end user perspective is sometimes also a little bit overlooked. We take it for granted, or we look more at wholesale markets, whereas I think it's very important, like Claudio just said, to take that perspective as well, business users as well as like individual users. I think if you then look at the whole digital ecosystem, which I think you should do, and I understand, of course, given the mandate of BEREC and also the mandate of Roberto, that he takes the DNA as a sort of vehicle to do this assessment, I think you should look even a little bit broader, because the issues that were mentioned, like security, geopolitical tensions, refer to other pieces of legislation which are not necessarily within the BEREC mandate, but are equally important to sort of harmonize or streamline or make more coherent. Because I think we all know that we ended up with this sort of patchwork of regulations, which in itself is nobody to blame for, but it's just the reality of today. And a lot of enforcing authorities also who need to work more together than ever. And I think there's a lot of gain to be one still in that space to make it a little bit more streamlined. If you do so, then I think you will also see as BEREC and as enforcers of telecom laws and of digital laws that some of the regulations can be easier, simplified. Like I said, not just like in the telco space, but also like law enforcement. When I was like working in big tech, we had like many discussions in each of the jurisdictions about very specific issues which could easily be more harmonized. It's just one example, but I think there are also within the telco framework a lot of examples where you can have like more simplified rules. I think also not just the EECC, but if you look at open internet regulation, this is me speaking as an economist, and I think that the UK with Ofcom has taken this approach already. There should be a bit more flexibility for innovation. And I think we are now, in the EU at least, like stuck a little bit into a legal reality given the ECJ hearings, judgments. And I think there should be a little bit of opening up to accommodate like people like BEREC and like Ben and Vodafone together with content providers to work on use cases that could be beneficial for consumers ultimately. So I think we need to step over that shadow and try to face the discussion also with like political people who might be more like fundamental in that space, but with evidence you can show that there's a bit more space there. And then in digital markets, right, there's a lot of discussion between telcos and digital markets, and mostly they are complementary. Of course, there's a lot of conversation about same service, same rules. That in itself is true, I would say, but quite often the services are not completely the same, and you should really dive into the dynamics of each of those services to see what's needed. I think transparency, it's been mentioned already. I think on the telco side, there's a lot of transparency already. I think on the digital side, there's a lot to be gained still. Me as a consumer would like to know more about the way algorithms work, the way content is moderated. Again, this is to some extent maybe outside BEREC's mandate or some of the NRA's mandate. It's maybe covered by the DSA. We don't know exactly where the boundaries are. But I think if you do a sort of like overall reassessment of all the digital and telco rules, don't forget to include all the other subjects. And if needed, and I think that BEREC can play a role here, because I think the BEREC brand is very credible. To me, it comes across, of course, I'm biased, I was part of that family, but I think it's still very independent and evidence-based, and I think that BEREC should also include like other authorities into that debate to come to more harmonized rules.
Mm-hmm. Telecommunication market is really becoming very broad, and it's covering, like you said, not only the telecommunication operators, but everything that is working on it. So, and what we heard is that people are obviously not using the telecommunication services enough to fill up the network bandwidth that is available. On the other side, we know that some people can't use this these services because they don't have enough of bandwidth. So, Claudio, do you see any risk of digital exclusion due to this difference in broadband, or even the changes in the whole society, that people will start to really gather in centers where this broadband is available and not live where it isn't? And maybe the other question, what measures should the regulators make not only in the telecommunication sector, but also the other sectors. So how to complement these measures that consumer will be protected all the way from A to B, so to say?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I wouldn't say there's a risk of. I would say this is already happening now. And it's been happening for quite a long time, which is the fact that whether you like it or not, the heart of the matter is the majority of consumers, even those you would think of are pretty much enjoying their services right now, they're not doing it in a vacuum. They're doing it in a context in which there is a context of high inflation and there is a cost of living crisis. And within this context, what we're seeing is that the majority of families right now are having to make very, very hard decisions on how to make sure they have food on the table for them and their kids. And when they're charged with triple-digit figures for basic connectivity to ensure their kid can go to school, this hits home. And this is a major problem we're having now. And we, from our side, we're very much concerned of how this debate has been shaping up over the past years, I guess now, and how somehow it seems to be the case that consumers most likely are to blame from pretty much everything. From their rules apparently have been hindering innovation. I was at a conference on AI the other day. Apparently, consumer rules apparently are the cause of Europe's delay and lagging behind since 1945, apparently, on pretty much every single sector. Who knew poor consumers could do this, right? Where we hear a story of how, the demand is so little, the infrastructure is there, and how can consumers not take it up? As in it's the consumer's fault that they don't see the benefit, they haven't saw the light of why they shouldn't have fiber in their homes. It's a no-brainer. If you cannot afford it, you will not take it. But most importantly, if you do not see a clear benefit, an added value that justifies to pay sometimes the disproportionate exponential prices they charge you from going from coaxial to fiber, when your connection still goes pretty much okay for the majority of your services. Maybe I don't need 5G. 4G is great for my streaming, teleworking, for my kids' homeschool. Maybe the overwhelming majority of consumers, I'm sorry to break it to you, they don't need that super ultra duper fiber they've been marketed, because the cheaper, affordable option is somehow managing quite well. So we need to figure a way in how we have to bring these sites together, in which we do have a necessity to innovate and to pursue investment in infrastructure and to lead the world, as they say, but we do have to realize one thing, that at the end of the day, these are services for consumers. And when consumers are telling you, thank you for this, but I cannot afford it, and thank you for this ultra service, but I'm very much finding my offer so far, this is a sign that should have reached out to you. And when we are talking about reform of these rules, we've said this from the beginning, there's plenty of complaints from consumers here. Telecommunications across the board are leading the consumer complaints for at least the last 5 years, the majority of our members. They still do. And if you ask them what are their main issues or why they're complaining about, it concerns end user rights. It concerns difficulty of switching. It concerns the issue of portability. It concerns unilateral price hikes without information or asking for consent, and then hardships to ensure that they can cease the contract, high penalty fees, breakdown of connection, lack of customer support, unresponsiveness from the operator, lack of coverage, or simple offers which have been advertised in a misleading way. These are what they keep on complaining about. And when we start having this discussion that we are having right now, and again, we see the end user focus simply put aside as in it's not an issue, what we have to say is, look, I mean, there's still a problem here. There are still rules that are out there that haven't been implemented. If we really want to have a discussion on how these rules must be changed, let's make sure that we start with the problems that the users are talking to us about. Because if we really want innovation, then there is no innovation if we don't break through to offer service that people want. You need to make things that people actually want. That's the real innovation. Innovation for the sake of innovation still doesn't cut it. You need to have something that serves consumers. And if you pursue innovation in a way in which is against consumer interest, that is based on, we're talking about AI, for instance, if it's based on the simple collection, exploitation of personal data without a user's consent, that is not for us innovation, the benefit of consumers, no matter how much interesting the Mia avatar over there might be and how well it might speak. You still are harnessing my personal data without my consent. You're still breaching my fundamental rights. So this is the fundamental issue we have to deal with as we go forward. As in, if we really want to have a debate on how to review these rules, we have plenty of suggestions to go around on things we should tweak. We suggest to start there. Then we can start thinking about how to make sure that we have, we can reach all the other objectives together. But for us, the bottom line is that when it comes to end-user rights, this is the bottom line, this is the last line of defense that keeps our consumers safe, but ensures a level playing field in a market that forces all the competitors to offer something, which is in the consumer's interest. It's a way to keeping them honest and ensure that we have business practices which are fair and that by rules that everyone must respect. So that is for us the key message that we want to give if we're really serious about going forward with some kind of review so ambitious of the rules.
Thank you very much. We could conclude here, I think. But I remember years ago when the 3G started, there was a need for killer applications so that people will start to exploit the bandwidth that 3G gave to the mobile network. But nowadays we see that people are using different applications, more or less everyone having his own base. And, Mr. Wreschner, we heard on a recent event in Barcelona that operators are actually calling now for more restrictive open internet rules, which would actually mean that people will not be able to access all the content equally, which will, of course, also not really make them use this content. We know that in some cases networks are maybe overwhelmed with the data, so you were also calling for minimizing the wasteful practices, so be more sustainable with the use of the networks, which probably we all can agree. But how about this open internet thing? Why do you think it should be more restrictive? We thought it should be more open.
So just to avoid any confusion, we don't want the open internet to be changed in a way that makes the internet more restrictive. We want the open internet rules, to the extent there are any, to be reflective of the modern networks that we have, which are smart networks, which are managing different streams of traffic in real time every second of the day. And the open internet rules which were set up approximately 10 years ago, by the way, in the absence of a competition failure, they were just imposed on every operator in the industry despite a proper competition analysis. They have not kept up with the times. So the idea that every megabyte of traffic that we convey on our networks should be treated absolutely equally makes no sense in a world where we want to have smart networks managing business-critical data at the same time it's managing broad consumer applications. And so our call is not to get rid of the open internet and make the internet more restrictive. It's to keep up with the times and understand that we need a principles-based approach to how end users experience the internet, and that ensures that there's no discrimination, that there's no undue self-preferencing, whatever it might be. But the concept that we would have an open internet which says every megabyte of data which is conveyed on our networks needs to be treated in exactly the same way, and you can't do sensible traffic management to ensure that we have the right approach to the different types of services, that is anachronistic, and it needs to be changed immediately, because that is holding the industry back in terms of developing the different types of use cases that at the same time we can have a network which supports, as we're seeing increasingly, we go to the traffic question, we see broadcast content increasingly moving onto our networks from dedicated terrestrial satellite broadcast networks onto our networks. If we want our customers to experience real-time sport events where you don't want to have one household watching the game and hearing the cheering from a household down the street because everything's gone out of sync, and at the same time we want to have our businesses running their critical applications, automated factories, whatever it might be. At the same time we have the general level of internet usage, just browsing, email access. we have to be able to manage this in real time, and the open internet doesn't work in that regard. And even with the flexibility that the likes of Ofcom have tried to introduce through an indication that they'll be more flexible in their interpretation of the rules, that gets us so far. But in the end of the day, law is law, and we've seen it in the case of the European Court of Justice, where we have an understanding of what we think the law might be, but the Court of Justice has a very different interpretation. And in the end, the consumer offers that we put into the market had to be taken away from the market. Consumer offers which were designed specifically to help low-income households manage their consumption in a way where they couldn't afford full unlimited data offers, but at least we could make some of the data which they valued more highly unlimited to them. This was deemed to be unacceptable according to the European Court of Justice, despite it being specifically targeted for those that couldn't afford full unlimited data packages. So our point on the open internet is not that we should make the internet more restrictive. On the contrary, it needs to be open, but it needs to be done in a way which keeps up to date with the times we live in and the smart networks, which will be critical for the economic growth and competitiveness that we all aspire to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Keetelaar, maybe a sentence of your opinion on that, and then on general from the white paper and also some other talks that we heard, how do mergers and acquisitions actually affect the competition for the end user?
Okay, first maybe I said something about the open internet already in my first intervention. And I think the problem with discussions about open internet and maybe also some other subjects which are a little bit more like political sensitive is always to sort of like disentangle the different goals, right? I think that the case that Ben is making and also that I was alluding to in my first interruption is to allow for more flexibility, because I believe that there are like use cases, and I think that Ben is trying to explain that, where I think that telcos, end users, and content providers will benefit from innovative approaches. And like I said, you know, Ofcom made an effort already, although the law in the UK also has some restrictions, but I think within that law they try to be as like innovative friendly, without losing sight on the fundamental rights, as innovative friendly as possible. I think that's a good step that also should happen in the EU at the minimum. Your other subject about mergers and acquisitions, yeah, it's a completely different discussion, which ultimately potentially also affects end users, of course. And I think that the different reports that Roberto Viola was also referring to, especially the Draghi report, has quite some substance on that. I also know that there's a bit of criticism by some other economists, and I think there's a very sensible paper by SER. I think that Richard Vesey is speaking on the next panel about that. I think I'm in that camp a little bit as an economist, that consolidation as such shouldn't be a goal. I think sometimes it can help, of course, to create benefits for the merging parties as well as for end users if the economic efficiencies are passed through in terms of prices, and that's exactly what you need to assess in a particular merger. I think we all know in this room that like cross-border mergers are not prohibited per definition, but apparently for some reason which go beyond simply merger regulation, I would say, they're not happening that often, right? So it might be worth investigating why. I think some people have done it already, but I don't think it's an easy problem to solve. Within country mergers, of course, it's a different discussion. We know the UK with the CMA mobile merger. I think Robert Maurik said something about it also just a little bit earlier. You need to assess that on the merits of that particular case, but I don't think that like allowing all kind of mergers very easily will solve the investment problem, right? I don't think that relationship is that direct and easy.
Okay, thank you. Marina, I'll start with you as I began with you. Maybe short, because it's not a lot of time, we talk too much. Is regulation hindering or actually accelerating the market from the user point of view? I mean, let's say we have a very good example of roaming. We saw what happened now that we can travel around and really use the phone for various purposes that we would not do at home. But in general, what do you think? the regulation is doing really, I mean, from the BEREC point of view, probably.
I should say now, this is a very interesting question for the BEREC, of course. Well, maybe it's popular among the society to say, well, we don't need regulation anymore, everything is well, and so on. But we all know that we need it. Because something that is important is when we are regulating, we have to find a balance. It is always the balance, if we are thinking from the consumer point of view, balance between end users' protection and obligations that we input towards operators. I don't mean in cases when operators say to us as NRAs, oh, it's too expensive, we can do it, we don't understand, and so on. Truly to understand how things work in practice. That's why NRAs and of course BEREC, through all the NRAs and sharing practice, have to work together with stakeholders, with BEUC and other consumer association to find the best possible way to set some standards. For example, we have new technologies, we have artificial intelligence, and imagine if we say, okay, let's see what happens, because everything seems great, but you know, if we don't have some legal, some ethical, some quality standards, for example, for artificial intelligence, who knows what happens? So we have to have some standards and we have to have some balance. Also, what I wanted to say is that regulators of electronic communications are not islands. We are not isolated, because we know now and see that there are many other digital services that have impact on users of electronic communications. So we have to work together to understand that new digital service and know how to regulate and set boundaries for the market and for the competition. Also, what is important is that I think also Claudio mentioned, well, we have sometimes everything great on the paper, but we have to move forward to end users to make them understand what they have, what they can use, to understand their role of regulators, role of operators and consumer associations. That we can achieve in different ways. For example, we can cooperate with consumer association. We can, as regulators, go towards end users and try to explain them in an easy way their rights and their obligations. For example, I can say, not as a BEREC, but maybe from the national point of view, HACOM, we are trying to be not as just distant regulator, we are going towards the media, end user shows and radio, TV shows to try to explain end users in the simple way what is there and what are the maybe possible threats in using digital services. Because we are all talking about digital inclusion, but this is very important to address and to highlight. Digital inclusion, not only if we are talking about universal service and people who are on the verge of poverty, who live in a distant areas on islands and they don't have connectivity. It is for everybody, because digital services are becoming a necessity in everyday life for functioning, for activities. In the future, you will not exist if you don't have access to digital service. So it is very important to have that, but have some kind of balance. And of course, end users also, we are expecting that they have some level of awareness where they can find information and where they can find the answers to their questions. On the other one hand, this is the regulator and maybe his role of resolving disputes. And on the other hand, operators should have a strong consumer protection and strong consumer system to address problems immediately. Not to say, okay, we will call you and contact you in, I don't know, 1 month. So they have to explain in easy way to the Okay, I'm looking at him, but he's there, so. In the easy way, how to resolve problems and how to make this a digital environment friendly for them, enabled to use and understand and to benefit from it.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm sorry that we looked at a red time so long. So let me wrap out also in the way that operators without consumers would not exist and vice versa, I think. So we have to find the proper way to cooperate. And of course, we are also doing a lot of things to educate consumers how to use and how to become a digital so to say, member of society. And I hope that in next years we will still gather together like this. Not everything will be digital, which will also maybe influence your networks, operators' networks in very good ways, so that they are not that busy as they would be if we were all at home. I'm sorry that I didn't give the word to anyone else here in the public, but I hope that we rounded up a little bit this topic, and that you, from my perspective, I think there were excellent answers, and I think I can only thank you for those. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bostjan and everyone.